I kid you not, my first hurricane season, when someone invited me to a hurricane party, I literally thought I was going insane. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Bougie Black Girls YouTube channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Dana, and today's video idea sort of came to me on a whim, but I do think it's super important, especially this time of year. We're going to be diving into the girl's guide for hurricane prep. This will be my 6th hurricane season living down south, and I started to see some news reports last week about how this particular season is definitely going to be a doozy, and it got me thinking about how over the past several years, while I'm not an expert, I've just done a lot better over time being prepared earlier so I feel safe and secure in a difficult, emergency situation. So if that's sort of some guidance you're looking for some insights to know like how to prepare to leave and also how to prepare to stay, then this definitely may be the video for you. So give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and let's get started. And of course, I have to give the disclaimer, I am not an expert, not a meteorologist, nor am I an emergency planner, but sometimes it's helpful to hear good starting points, girl to girl, person to person. So if that's the guidance you're looking for, this is that video. So to me, the first step in planning or preparing for emergency situations is actually not buying supplies to stay in that situation. It's figuring out how you're going to get out of that situation. And when you live in an area that's like prone to natural disasters, particularly if you live in an area that's prone to hurricanes, it can be very easy to get caught up listening to the locals and sort of how people tend to downplay the severity of the situation. And that'll sort of like Jedi mind trick you into thinking that you should be staying. But even after several years, I feel like the concerns and the scariness around storms hasn't really went away. So the best way that I have found to ease my storm anxiety is to have a really strong action plan for what I'm gonna do if I need to hit the road. Because you can have every flashlight, every canned good, available to man, but that's not gonna stop a storm or a situation from getting so severe that you're gonna have to leave no matter what. Knowing your specific area and its risk factors for storms is definitely a game changer. So for example, if you live by the coast, maybe you need to worry about storm surge. If you're, on a lower elevation area, you may need to worry about flooding. If you live in an area with a lot of trees, you may have to worry about, things falling over and roof damage and things like that. And I think knowing those things and sort of contrasting them with the severity of whatever situation you're going to be in can help you make a great decision for your personal safety on whether or not you're going to stay or go. And with that, I think it's really important to listen to meteorologists and storm experts in your area. I like the social media weather reporting. I like the Weather Channel, windy.com. All those things are very helpful tools, but I don't think they surpass or replace meteorologists in your area telling you about the risk factors for where you live. And so having that very specific reporting is really just going to be irreplaceable no matter what. And you're going to want to pursue that and make sure you are connected to that. Most local news stations for like your county, your city, whatever, will have an app that you can download and just sort of get the live broadcast. So I tend to download those around this time of year and just keep them on my phone throughout the entire duration of hurricane season. And then from there, once you have those resources, you can really start to think through, what are your boundaries in your areas for when you're going to try and hunker down versus when you are going to try to evacuate. Of course, if the experts in your area say pack a bag, get in your car, hop on a flight, and go. It's never a bad idea to have an exit strategy planned in advance. Usually I like to fly and just go stay with family far, far away from the path of the storm, like maybe in the Northeast, or like maybe stay with a friend on the West Coast or something, if I've got the resources to do so. But flights are expensive, so an alternative and probably a more accessible option for most people is just to have a plan to drive. Start thinking about a couple of cities or locations a few hours away from where you live that will get you out of the path of the storm in 2 separate directions. So that way, no matter, if the storm is coming from the east or the west, you have a plan to drive in whatever the opposite direction is. Also, the realities of being a Black woman in the South, I have to think about my safety. And so not every city is going to be, somewhere I am comfortable staying overnight. And so thinking about where I can realistically drive, within my means and my car, and also where I'm going to be, able to safely stay with a friend or book a hotel. All things I'd like to think about well in advance of hurricane season. So when an emergency hits, I've got my game plan. I can just pack a bag and hit the road. So once you have your exit strategy developed, then I think it is appropriate to start thinking through what supplies and resources you're going to need in your home if there's a situation where you decide to stay put, because not every storm is, necessarily severe enough that you need to pack a bag. I like to break up my hurricane supplies into 4 different categories: food and water, lighting and tools, sanitation and hygiene, and then 4th is just like whatever other miscellaneous items that I need. First up, food and water. I think this is the one that is the most intuitive for people. It seems the most approachable. So I don't really have too much to say in this area. When it comes to water, I think that the general guideline is 1 gallon of water per person per day for about a week. And so, for example, if you've got 2 people in your house, you're going to need 14 gallons of water as your prep, which is, a lot. So you definitely maybe want to try and start that in advance if you can. When I'm prepping for hurricane season or just stockpiling my emergency goods, when it comes to food, I think I've had to learn the hard way that you should really only buy and prep things that you will actually eat, because if you are fortunate enough that, you're not susceptible to a massive hurricane or a power outage or something, you are still left with all this food. And so you want it to be something that you will actually utilize in your daily life once the threat of an emergency has passed. And you can find a ton of lists and ideas online as to what people are buying. For me, the things that I buy that I actually eat are canned fruits, protein bars, granola bars, shelf-stable coconut milk or almond milk, cereal, things like that I think will get used for me, as opposed to canned pasta. I haven't had a can of Chef Boyardee in years. So if I buy that for an emergency, it's truly not getting eaten unless, I'm struggling on day 14 of a power outage. So yeah, just buy what fits your usual diet, and also make sure you have a manual can opener. That is something that I forgot my first hurricane season and had to figure that out the hard way. Moving on to lighting and tools, flashlights, lanterns, and batteries to sort of, support those are an obvious kind of situation. I would say just overestimate the amount of batteries that you probably want to have on hand, because you never know how long a power outage or something like that is going to go. I also think it's a really good idea to have at least one solar powered flashlight somewhere in your house. I've got one somewhere tucked away. I'll try to link some of the tools that I use in my Amazon storefront, but I do have both a hand crank and a solar powered flashlight, and I think those are just great, in the event that things get prolonged and I need non-battery light sources. Similarly, small battery operated or rechargeable fans are a great idea. Hurricane season in the South is summer, is hot, so something to stay cool is always a great idea. Some sort of multi-tool like a Swiss Army knife, duct tape, lighters, and matches. Even though you're really not supposed to use candles in a disaster, it's still just nice to have those things on hand. Ziploc bags to keep anything important dry, and then just a rain poncho, and also some boots just in case you're in an area for flooding. Being able to sort of cover yourself up from the water, always a good idea. Sanitation and hygiene, this area really shouldn't cost people much. I think in most scenarios, these are things that you already have in your home. I think you just want to make sure throughout, hurricane season or just with a general preparedness kit, you've got a reasonable stockpile for your home and for your household on hand. So wet wipes, paper towels, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, some sort of facial cleaning wipes, makeup remover, something to sort of give yourself a freshen when water is limited or running water isn't available. Toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, over-the-counter medications, any prescription medications that you may need personally, and having a first aid kit. You should have that in your house anyway, but if you don't have one, you definitely need to make sure you have one on hand with plenty of bandages and medical wipes for the hurricane season. And then the final category of like other miscellaneous things, these are just items where you kind of want to know where they are, or things that you want to do. I always fill up my car with gas no matter what before a storm. Again, you never know when you're going to need to hop in your car and drive somewhere. So being gassed up, being able to drive, several miles in one direction or the other, always a great idea. You also want to make sure that you have your emergency contacts written down somewhere so you can get in contact with friends or family if something goes awry. Also a really good idea to write down the contact number of like the local emergency services so you can get in contact with your area specifically. Always good to have a little bit of cash, so I normally try to have anywhere between $100 and $200 on hand in small bills. Plenty of offline entertainment, so if the power is out, the internet is out. So books, puzzles, coloring, crafting, anything you can do analog is going to be great to keep you entertained for several days. And then make sure you have a go backpack. So this book bag will normally have like a change of clothes, a couple of like those toiletries that we mentioned earlier, along with some water and your important documents. So again, if something happens where you just need to grab a bag and get out the front door, that bag is packed and you are ready to go. So final thoughts, like I said, this is sort of just a entry point crash course sort of think through of emergency situations, hurricanes in particular, for anyone who sort of just kind of feels lost navigating, I don't know, the nonsense that is an emergency. I would just say always plan to leave first and stay second. You never want to be in a situation where you're not prepared to go. And while I know evacuating can be expensive and scary, sometimes it's the better option for your peace of mind. So definitely make sure you're listening to local officials and whoever is sort of guiding that emergency effort in your area. But just be prepared so you can make the best decisions to keep you and your loved ones safe. That is all I have for you guys today. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out as we are starting our growth journey this year. I think next week we're going to go back to some vlog style content. Like I said, summer is starting to kick off and I've got a lot of fun things going on that I am ready to take you guys along for. So definitely be sure to stick around. Be sure to follow me on socials and I will catch you next week for another video. Bye.